from there.
Yeah. Great.
I was just this is tapping into two things that I have been looking at because we have all these different. Well, let's just start with nature because I've been learning so much. One of the things I realized when I was on Wall Street and I was trying to explain to somebody how the systems worked in the world, I suddenly realized that all the systems are exactly the same. Now, that is a very simplistic way of putting it, but I was looking at markets at that time and I was trying to explain how this all worked. And of course, it was it was just at a very superficial level because I certainly had not studied it, but it was something I noticed. Now, taking that and looking at what's going on the planet in terms of plants, kind of gotten fascinated by this because of this fertilizer that we developed and watching what is actually happening. Now, I'm not an academic, so all I can do is what I see, what I taste, and what I'm seeing as a result. Um, and then taking that just a step further because it's exactly like the human body, same system. So we're back to the way things function is so similar. Now we can take it even further. Like for instance, if you put your saliva on a seed and you plant it, that plant will grow up and have your DNA in it specifically grown for you. Now that's way out there, but this has been tried and done. It's kind of wild. And my husband burst out laughing when I gave him the article that explained this because he thought, can you imagine farming in the future? It's like this corner, these are your tomatoes, these are, this is your chard and, blah, blah, blah. But coming from a background of always having loved plants, I'm going to just explain this as I have how I perceive it. I've always loved plants. I don't know anything about them. I never even knew the names of my house plants, and yet they all thrived. And I had so many people that would come in and go, "What are you doing?" And all I ever did was water them. And I would say, "I water them." And it wasn't until I read an article about how plants can actually identify the person who is taking care of them. And that person, they will send off pheromones. So this is a communication system that is going on between this living plant, which is, obviously people say, yes, of course it's alive, it's growing, but it has the ability to interact on levels that we're not conscious about normally. So now, having said that, I also know that when in community around other people, there is an exchange of thoughts and feelings. I grew up as a Foreign Service brat, so I traveled all over I was in Europe and Africa. And when we came back to the States, and I was just a teenager, I was 13, we ended up moving into a town in Virginia that still flew the Confederate flag. Now, I had lived in Black Africa and Senegal and in Mauritania where there were Arabs, and I had been to French schools and I went to boarding school in England. So I had been around this whole array of people, and I always thought they were all the same. We're all just people. And we speak different languages. Okay, so I learned the language, etc., and we interact. And these guys, you always have to bargain. They love to bargain. When you're shopping for something, you come to the States, you just walk into a store and you buy it. There's no, Anyway, to me, it was I just took this in as this is how it is. But I knew fundamentally we are all the same. And with cultural differences, I was devastated when I heard that Europe was turning into the EU because I kept saying, but all those cultures, the wonders of Italy, the wonders of Spain, these were very cultural. So now here we are in a world where I suddenly start learning about this density and the polarity, the duality that we're in. And so, okay, so this is 3D. And when I finally kind of looked at this and thought, well, polarity isn't necessarily bad, because there are wonders on the good side. And of course, the negative side is icky. But why do we also look at something as painful as being bad? What does bad mean? Because good and bad is a reaction that we have. I've been kind of looking at this. What is it that triggers this in our brains so that we aren't looking at this as good and bad are the same? They're just different reactions.